Ladies and gentlemen, it is 7 o'clock on a Monday, and it's time for Monday Night Nerd. Thank you all very much for tuning in tonight. My name is Myers Corp Creations, and I am here with Monday Night Nerd. This is the second episode. I hope you guys are excited. We got a lot of topics to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the PlayStation State of Play. We're going to talk about my review of Cocaine Bear from last night. We're going to talk about The Fablemans, which is a movie that a lot of people don't know about, but it is an incredible movie. We're going to review that. We're also going to talk about our main event, which is about toy collecting and working for the giraffe, which I think a lot of you can understand what that is. And we also got some Q&A at the end of the episode. But more importantly, for those that are interested, at the end of this show, I'm going to tell all of you what the next 5 episodes of Monday Night Nerd is going to be, because I've already planned it, because the March month is going to be a themed month. Every week, we're going to have a specific theme that will go throughout the month, but you have to stick around for the end of the episode to find out what that theme is and what the episodes will be. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight on Monday Night Nerd. For those who are new here, my name is Myers Corp Creations. I am from the great province of Ontario, Canada, and I've been a nerd for about 35 years come this May. I've been going to conventions for over 10 years. I have been cosplaying for 10 years. I've been a wrestling fan for probably 20 years. I'm just an overall nerd on a lot of things. And this is my time to just talk about some things. We're going to have some fun, talk about some experiences that I've been involved with, and some topics that I think are pretty cool. So let's kick the show off a little bit. Let's kick it off with the some news right now. We're going to talk about the PlayStation State of Play. Now, for those who don't know, PlayStation released they do this every couple months. It's just a little video that they put out highlighting some things that are in the works. Nintendo does one similar. I don't think Xbox does. They probably do. I'm not an Xbox fan. But PlayStation State of Play usually gets a lot of hype a day or two before, because a lot of people get excited about it because they're thinking a new trailer is going to come out or some information on an upcoming game, etc. And this one was no different. I heard a lot of rumblings the day of that they were going to talk about the Suicide Squad game coming for PlayStation in the next couple of months, which everyone's excited for because it's by the same guys that did Batman Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham City, and that's the Rocksteady people. They were also going to talk about a little bit about Resident Evil 4 and the remake for that that's going to be coming out in the next little while. And the overall response was meh. And it seems to be a trend with a lot of these. I know Nintendo has been they've been hit and miss. There's been some that have been really good, and there have been some that are, they don't really get it. But the problem is with Nintendo is if they throw out a blockbuster trailer like the new Zelda game, or when they dropped that Mario Kart was going to get a whole bunch of new tracks, or when GoldenEye was announced, that is always the one that's going to be remembered. Unfortunately, this one for PlayStation, there wasn't a lot after it came out. It usually comes out just before I get home from work, and when I get home from work, I'm usually pretty psyched to see what people are saying about it, and I did not see anything, which shocked me. I figured there'd be something. And usually good news and bad news is good because at least gets your name out there. No news is the problem. And I think that was a problem with this because the Resident Evil 4 trailer came out, which I saw, which was amazing, but I think we all expected it to be amazing. They've done Resident Evil 2, they've done Resident Evil 3, and those were amazing. So I don't think we were too hyped for number 4 because we knew it was going to happen and we knew they would do a good job. Suicide Squad, however, that's where we're running into a little bit of problems. I know a lot of people were excited for this game when it was first announced because it was, again, by the Rocksteady people who did some amazing work on their past games. But the problem we're running into with Suicide Squad is, A, it's a multiplayer game. Actually, let me take that back. It's not a multiplayer game. You could do single player, but they're really focusing on 4-player co-op, which, based off how the Marvel Avengers game did, that left a bad taste in their mouth. And I think a lot of people are remembering that wasn't as good as people hoped, and are now worried that if Rocksteady goes down a similar path, you might run into the same problems. You're also running into a pass system where there will be a pass and you will get certain things for getting the pass. Okay, so that's another thing we got to pay for. and they're doing the customized armor and appearances, which isn't just cosmetic. It influences play. It influences hit detection, all these extra perks if you wear certain things. Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not a fan of that. Especially, I noticed that a lot in the Injustice 2 game. That there's a lot of extra cosmetics that I don't want to wear because I don't like the look of them. But you have to because it boosts your stats so high that you just obliterate people. And I feel like we're falling down that rabbit hole with Suicide Squad. And from what I've heard and what I've read, that the pre-orders are starting to get cut, and people are calling back to GameStops and such and say, you know what, cancel my pre-order because I'm not interested anymore. And I think Rocksteady really needs to pull something out of their bag in the next little while and say, this is why you should get this game. Otherwise, I think we might have another Marvel Avengers issue. And that's going to be bad because I think I played Marvel Avengers and I liked it, but I see where people had problems with it because it is very much a multiplayer game. And I'm not a multiplayer person. I don't have people that I play with online. I'm a single player guy. So jumping into that as a single player guy, it's not for me. So I think I think they might have that issue, but hey, you never know. They've pulled out some miracles at the end in the past when it comes to things like Arkham Origins that gets, for some reason, got obliterated when it came out, but it's an amazing game. So you never know. You never know. We have to wait and see what the next little while. I think it comes out in a couple months, so they've got some time to maybe pull something here and there. But we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Other than that, there wasn't a lot that jumped out at me of the PlayStation State of Play, and I think this is sadly becoming a trend with a lot of these, that it's just there isn't a lot in these state of plays that are really worth people freaking out about, unless it's something like the PS5 announcement or the update to PlayStation Plus. I think they talked about one time. So anything like that, it's important. But other than that, I think a lot of people are going to start skipping these things because there really isn't anything to jump out at anybody. And so we'll have to wait and see. But I think I think another one a little farther down with a big announcement would be nice. Maybe a GTA 6. It's only been a couple years, which we will get into. I will bring that up later on when I'm talking about working for the giraffe, that a GTA 5 issue that I ran into. But let's pop over to the next. The next. I can't believe this is an actual movie. I'm gonna talk about my review for Cocaine Bear. I saw Cocaine Bear last night in the theaters with a good friend of mine, Dave. Dave, there's your shout out. Thank you for everything and being one of several movie buddies that I frequent the movies with. Cocaine Bear. If you told me 5 years ago that there was a movie going to come out called Cocaine Bear and it wasn't made as an independent movie and it was a theatrical release, I would have laughed in your face. However, I had fun. I had a lot of fun at Cocaine Bear. The premise, I think, if anybody's seen the trailer, is Bear gets some cocaine. There is a reason. It's a logical reason, actually. And he goes on a rampage. And that's kind of the movie. Like all the reviews I've said to people is the name says itself. Like, it's Cocaine Bear and he goes on a rampage, and that's the movie. The beginning of the movie is slow. I will totally admit the beginning of the movie is very slow. You're growing into the relationship with these characters that are not the Cocaine Bear, and it sort of runs into the Friday the 13th, the Nightmare on Elm Street, even Halloween to a certain point, Scream for sure. You're running into some of these characters that you just don't care about, and they kind of become cannon fodder, and you just want to see them get destroyed. And there was a couple of them in this movie. There was some that I actually liked. There was a park ranger, which was hilarious. The kids in this are funny. They have written the kids in this movie to sound like kids. There are so many movies that I've seen kids that are just, they're either written like idiots or they're written too adult because an adult wrote it. This rides a balance of kids wanting to be adults, and it's It's funny. It's really done well. There are some jokes that are pretty funny. There are some moments where eh, you could see where they could have pushed that over the line when it comes to a joke and pushed it too far, but I think they wrote it very well, and I think they did a great job. I gave it, I posted on my Instagram last night after the movie. I gave it an 8. I give it an 8 in fact of it's what I expected, not an 8 as in like it's up against a 10 out of 10, like, Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino or something like that. It's an 8 because it's what I expected. I'm not expecting it to be this amazing classic movie that's going to live on in history. I went in for a fun horror comedy. I got a fun horror comedy. You did your job. 8 out of 10. So I highly recommend it. I understand if you don't want to see it in theaters. I had some extra passes, so we didn't have to pay for the tickets. So that that was a plus. I feel like if I paid premium for it, I would have been maybe a little disappointed in how much I paid to see a movie called Cocaine Bear. But for a free movie, it wasn't bad. I would recommend waiting for it to come out on digital, either through a streaming service or rent it on whatever rental platform you want to. Go see it if you're a fan of mid to late Friday the 13th. Like if you like part 5, 6, 7, 8, go see it. You'll get a kick out of it. I had a lot of fun. Now let's pass it over to The Fablemans. Now, this is a movie. This is definitely an Oscar movie. This is a movie that there was some Oscar buzz about it. I think definitely Brendan Fraser and um, the cast of Anything, Anywhere, Anytime, I believe it is, something like that. They're getting all the publicity because chances are they're going to win the major awards, which I understand. But The Fablemans was an incredible movie. The Fablemans is based around Steven Spielberg. It is about his childhood growing up and falling in love with movie making. If you're a creator, and I stress this, if you're a creator in any way, whether it's cosplay, whether it's writing, whether it's movie making, whether it's drawing, whatever, go watch this movie. You will love it. The cast is great, and just watching the Fablemans as a creator, just it hits you in a way that a normal person, and I say normal person like creators aren't normal, it hits you in a different way because there are so many times when Steven as a child goes through something, a traumatic event in some way, and he always goes back to his art as his safe place. I'm not going to spoil it, but something happens in his family, and he he deals with that in movie making, and he's making a movie for, I believe, his high school prom or whatever it was. And his family's going through a terrible time, and he's going through it, but he's the most calm. A, he knew a little bit about it beforehand, but B, he's dealing with it through his art. And I'm not going to spoil the movie, but there is a moment when he's dealing with it, and his family member comes in and has sort of a confrontation with him saying, this is something we're all dealing with, but you seem really calm about it. And he says, I'm dealing with it my own way. And then as that family member is leaving, he says, can you stop? Can you just do one thing for me? And they say, what? He says, can you sit down and just watch this with me? It's my new movie. And you just feel that comfort of this is my safe spot. And man, did it hit. It hit so hard for me going, if I have a bad day, like if anybody knows me, especially my wife, if I'm having a bad day, I come up here and I'm building something or I'm, creating some way because that's my outlet for everything, positive, negative, etc. And just watching that movie, just it hit such a strong point with me. And like I said, I recommend everybody that's an artist, anybody that creates, go watch it. Even if you're not a movie maker, you will understand his mindset and his feeling that just, oh, it was so good. It was so good. I give it a 9 out of 10. There is some slow parts and there is a little bit of, I gotta admit, one of the things I'm really picky about, I know last week I talked about sci-fi and animal or creatures in the sci-fi world have to be very creative for me to be okay with it. If it's a cat person or something like, or a lizard person, I kind of just, yeah, that was you could have done better. I hate high school bullies in movies. They are so stereotypical, and I've seen high school bullies. I think a lot of us have, and just some of the things they do and say is just so, you'd never have that happen. And I know this was shot or set in many many moons ago, and I know today's world is a lot different than then, but even then, just watching some of the bullies say some of the things that they do and do some of the things they do, it's just like, okay guys, they don't act that way. Even your worst bully is not going to act that way. But that's me being me. But definitely go see it. Fablemans, I think it's coming out digitally. I think it's coming out digitally soon. So check it out. I think it's just under just over 2 hours. I think it's 2 hours, 20 minutes. Great movie. The guy who played Riddler in the Batman, Paul Dini, he's in it. Pineapple Express. I can't think of his name. Anyways, you know him, comedian Stoner. He's in it. Great cast. Go watch it. Great movie. All right, let's pass it now to our sponsors for the night. Now, as always, the head sponsor for every episode going forward is, of course, my beautiful and loving wife, because without her, I would not be here. I would not be doing this show. I would not be in this beautiful cave, room, whatever you want to call it, doing this. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for always having my back. You will always be the number one sponsor because I wouldn't be here without you. However, we do have a second sponsor tonight, and that sponsor is Mr. Dave Thorne. Some of you know Dave. Some of you don't know Dave. He did something very kind and very generous, which he does to everybody who knows him. And if you know him, you know he's a very generous and kind man. But one day I gave him a message and I said, hey, I'm thinking of trying out this podcast thing. And he was doing a podcast, which escapes my mind right now. I cannot remember the name of it. And if he's watching, he's going to throw it in the chat and he's going to punch me next time I see him because I was on the podcast, but I'm just so focused on this show, I can't think of it. But unfortunately, that podcast they ran into a couple hiccups, I think, and just it unfortunately stopped. So he had some equipment and I just said, hey, can I borrow a mic? Just want to record some things. I wasn't thinking of this at the time. I was just thinking I want to record something. And he messaged me back and he said, sure, I got a mic for you. And he said, well, do you need a mixer? And I said, yeah, like I stupidly thought that all mics were USB, but I said, yeah, I guess I would need a mixer. He goes, well, here, take a mixer. And he goes, we'll have some lights too. Fandom Frontier. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. Yep, there's the punch. Fandom Frontier. You can still check it out. Check out their Instagram. Check out all their stuff on YouTube. They actually are an amazing podcast. I wish they were still going because they did a great job. But yes, Fandom Frontier. I was on their cosplay episode, so check that out after you're done this. But anyways, Dave did a very, very sweet and generous thing, and he gave me a couple mics, and he gave me a mixer, and he gave me lights, and he gave me some advice, and that means a ton. He didn't have to do that, but he helped a buddy out, and with that, I'm able to do this. So, Dave, you are tonight's sponsor because without you, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be doing it with a headset mic, and that just kind of sounds weird sometimes. So, thank you very much, Dave, for everything you've done for me to get this ball rolling. Now, this is usually the point in the show where we do thanks for the memories. And for those who are just joining us that have never seen, I didn't see episode one, thanks for the memories is usually the point in the show where we talk about people in the nerd community that we have lost. And thankfully, we didn't lose anybody this week. So we do not have to do that segment, which is kind of good. I mean, I miss a segment, but on the other hand, no one passed away that I know of. So I'm okay with that. So we're going to skip that one and we're going to jump right into the main event of the evening. And the main event of the evening, for those who have been paying attention, is working for the giraffe and toy collecting. So back in the day, back when I was a youngin', I collected toys like everybody else. Now, when I say toy collecting, I did not come from a family that had a ton of extra money. So we lived a medium to modest life. And I was never in a position where I had to, where we had to fend and do all these, live in we lived very modest means. And thankfully, I had a grandma and grandfather who were very generous when it came to a lot of my Christmas presents and would make sure that I had a very good toy under the Christmas tree and birthdays as well. And I had a pretty good set of toys growing up. Some of them I still have. Some of them I had to get rid of. Some of them got broken, which still hurts to this day. Um, but definitely started off my collecting with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I think a lot of kids my age probably started out with. I can't remember exactly what age that would have been. Probably about 6, 5, just getting into school. Um, I had the original lineup. If I remember correctly, I had at least 3 of them. I might have been missing one. I want to say I had Donnie, Mike, and Raph. I don't think I had Leo yet. And I remember having a couple extra, Foot Soldier or something like that. Um, and that's unfortunately some of them that got donated at a certain point in my life because I wasn't playing with them, which I completely understand that there comes a time in every kid's age where the fandom kind of passes and they're on to the next thing, and that happens. But boy, do I wish I still had those because they were pretty cool. And the re-releases are great. 100% the re-releases are great, but they're just not the originals. The originals were the best. But not long after that, the Power Rangers thing kicked in. And that's when I really wanted everything. The infamous story with my parents was I think they're 18-inch. They were about the size ones of the original 5 came out Christmas one year. And from what I was told, my mom was able to get a couple of them. My dad was able to run around the city trying to find the remaining. But I think one Christmas, from everybody, I ended up getting every one of them. And I believe those are still at my mom's house in a box somewhere, which I would love to bring all my toys to my house, but unfortunately we don't have the space to display everything as much as I would love to. But those were the kickoff. And then after that, I wanted everything. I had the Blaster Morpher 2-pack, which was like the coolest thing because nobody had the Morpher when I was growing up. That was the toy. That was the first play toy that wasn't a figure, and I call it a cosplay toy, where you can use it as a cosplay piece, and nobody had it. I think because that 2-pack was so expensive, that was a premium gift, and that was one that I requested like crazy. And I finally got it, and I went to school, and I was the king of that school for at least a day. And I still have it. It's in pretty good condition. The stickers are coming off a little bit because, like all kids, I played with my toys. And I think that's one of the things that is interesting now with toy collecting is that there's so much collecting, but not enough playing of them. So the toy you're almost buying two of them. You're buying one for a shelf and one to actually open and play with. And I see it, and I know the people who are making them are loving it because everybody's trying to buy two at this point. But a lot of my toys from being a kid, were they were used, which I think is okay. I think trying to find something in pristine condition from that era is harder because kids played with stuff. And like, check out those LJN WWF figures. If you can find a whole set of all of them in pristine condition, you're lucky, because I rarely see any of those that are in moderate condition. For some of them. I've seen some Hogans that are just beat to daylights out of them, and I I can't I can't fathom that there's many out there that are in pristine condition. Um, but yeah, we went from those, and then when the movie came out, when the movie came out, it exploded. I wanted all the shiny figures, I wanted all the flip head figures, I wanted everything. And I had a fairly good collection, but unfortunately with most things, there were some pieces that were given away because I wasn't playing with them after a while. Because after that, that's when the wrestling kicked in, and that was about 1997, and that just sort of became my life. And I collected WWE stuff like it was going out of style. I bought at that point I asked for everything. My first and the funny thing is, and this was, for anybody that's a wrestling fan, this was mid to late 97 going into 98. So we were, for the people who know, this was before Steve Austin. This was Brett, Shawn, Montreal Screwjob just before that era. So your big names at that point were Brett, Shawn, Taker, Austin, etc. And the first figure I ever bought was Jerry the King Lawler. I don't even remember. I want to say it was Sears. I remember walking by and I saw this guy with a crown, and I went, I want him as my first wrestling figure. And I just laugh now because, for those who don't know, Jerry Lawler wasn't really wrestling. He was a commentator at that point. And that was my first figure. And I'm like, wait a minute, why did I pick that one? But there was something about it. And I would love for Jerry Lawler to come to a convention around here, because I would love to tell him that story. And I would love to just say, like, there was something about you. And even as not even a big fan at that point, there was something about you that just caught my attention. And that was part of me getting into wrestling. But after that, it was, I needed the ring. With the ring, I got Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it was all out war after that. I was creating. This was before, and remember, for anybody who's under the age of 18 who might watch this, this was a time when you didn't have all the extra accessories. It wasn't till probably 2000 that you had the stage and you had the guardrails and stuff like that. So I was building this stuff out of cardboard. I built mats. I built the ring area. I built the stage. I built all this. I built title belts, because at the time there was only the WWE Championship. So I picked that up. That was probably 98. But there was all these other belts on TV, so I started creating them out of cardboard, and that's all we had until probably 2001, 2002 was when they started to put all of the belts in toy form. And yeah, I had everything, and I still have a pretty good amount of it, because I realized back then, like, this is something that I'm going to be a fan of for a very long time. I've still got a tote full of figures. I still have all my belts. Actually, no, I take that back. I lost one belt, and it's the one that most people hate, and that's the John Cena spinner belt. I personally kind of like that belt now. I hated it at the time, but I like it now. But yeah, I've still got all my WWF stuff, and I've had opportunities to get rid of it. There's part of me that probably should, but part of me still loves it. And I know they're not doing much collecting dust in a bin, but you know what? I still like having them. Doesn't mean I ever get to see them. I just know they're there. And funny enough, knowing that they're there leads into a section later where I talk about working for the giraffe. But before we do that, we're going to jump into a quick top 5. We're going to talk about the top 5 toys that I had growing up. Now, there's one, two, three figures, let's say. One is a group of figures. And then a couple extra things that are pretty cool. But I'm going to start off with my favorite wrestling toy growing up. And while the belts and all that stuff were great, the coolest toy growing up, and it still is, I don't know if it was this creative gene in me or something that I saw it this way, but the coolest figure I had was a 1997 Shawn Michaels in red pants. And most people would look at that figure and go, okay, it's a good figure. You know, it was one of the first Shawn Michaels toys of the bone crunching era, as wrestling nerds call it. But there was something about the figure that stood out to me, and I figured out several years later why. Now, if anybody can remember the GI Joes and excuse me, and the Power Rangers and blah 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 blah, they all were very boxy. So arm straight down, and when you raise the arm, they did this. And they were very, you could do this with them. You can maybe turn a hip or something, but not a lot of movement. With this Shawn Michaels, it was built differently and in a very good way. So, this Shawn Michaels, he was built with his chest and then he went down into his waist. It was in a V shape. And his arms were kind of built out like this, which not many of the figures were built this way, but I really appreciate it because when you raised his arms up, it raised them up to about this area. He had an open hand and a closed hand. So you could grab the other toy like this and throw a punch. But if you raised his arms up like this, it almost looked like you could stand him on the top rope and do a flying cross body with him. Or you could do a big axe handle off the top rope. You could do so many things with this Shawn Michaels if you let your mind work. And it looked like he could do more without doing more than the other figures. Like there were some that just, like I said, you had that box shape and you looked kind of robotic. But this one, it looked like he moved a little better. And even when you run, like he sort of ran like a real runner would run and not this boxy look. So that has always been my favorite my favorite wrestling toy growing up was that Shawn Michaels. And they did a couple different variants of it. There's a white pants one, a blue pants one, but the red one was the one I had, and that is one that I've always enjoyed. Also, as I mentioned before, the tall Power Rangers, I believe they're about 18 inches, 12 inch, 18 inch. I can't remember the exact measurements, but those were like the first premium toys that I remember of just looking at those and going, this is more than just a figure. It came with the gun. It just looked like it did more. And to be fair, if I remember correctly, the Morpher was just a little jewel on the belt. So maybe not the best quality overall, but it was still a good figure. And they sold like mad, if I remember correctly. And there's still, even now, there's people looking for them and you can find them for a pretty premium. So those will always live in my heart, especially because I know my mom and dad went the extra mile to make sure I had all of them. So when I understood, if I look back and I'm like, I understand if you didn't want to run all over the city, but I appreciate the effort. So thank you, mom and dad, for going the extra mile that Christmas. The last one is so, if you're a kid of the 90s, you know it. If you're a kid of any other generation, you don't care. I have all 4 Street Sharks. And I don't care what anyone says. That is one of the coolest concepts ever. And if you've ever seen these toys, it is so cool looking. So the concept of Street Sharks is there's four guys, they get injected with this serum and they turn into a half shark, half man. Really weird concept, but in the 90s it made a lot of sense. And these toys, the waist down was a plastic like a normal toy, but the top had like this big mouth on each one of them that you could push the fin on the back, its mouth opens up, but like half of the toy was all rubber and you could like push it and feel it. It was such a cool look and a cool, they came in a box with caged bars on it that were ripped open. It looked like it was ripping through it. Such a cool show, such a cool toy. They had a couple different variants of them. They had a big, you want a little Easter egg, go on YouTube after you're done this show, type in Street Shark hand puppet Vin Diesel. It's one of his first acting roles, and it's promoting the Street Sharks toys, specifically the Street Sharks rubber hand puppet. It's hilarious. He's probably 18 to 20 in it. And it is, go search it. It's funny. But those toys I will always love. I always think they're some of the coolest designs, and I've had them since I was a kid, and I will never get rid of those. And that's one that I wouldn't mind. I should probably bring those over and display them because they are pretty cool. And I like the people who know the show but forget about it when they come in and see it and they're like, "Oh, Street Sharks!" And I'm like, "Yep, that's how cool I am." Because I like Street Sharks just like you guys. Fourth, Nerf Secret Shot. I, like most kids, love Nerf guns. It was a staple around the area. Everybody had a Nerf gun, and mine was a Secret Shot. A simple gun, but I enjoyed it. It was a green gun, had a little spot on top to put an extra bullet. And when you flick the little lever over, you tilted it back like you're, when someone yells freeze, you throw your hands up in the air, and there's a little bullet here, and you pull the trigger and it shoots out the butt of the gun. That is such a cool idea. I think I still have that gun somewhere, but it was one of the coolest guns in my opinion. Everyone had, the big bows and grenade launchers and stuff. That was a cool little concept that I know a few friends of mine got pinged pretty good when they thought they had me, and I caught them with that Secret Shot. Last would be, I want to say it was Fisher Price. It might have been Fisher Price, might not have been. My mom picked me up a tape player. And this is probably the start of me becoming a music nerd, because this was a little recorder with a microphone, and I could play my tapes anytime I wanted. And it was nuts. I played so many things. I probably had that thing from when I was a kid, when I was listening to Sharon Lois and Bram, all the way up to probably 14, 15. Like, I just burnt the daylights out of that. And I also had a microphone, which I could sing along with them, which I will hold on to a story that I will tell in a future episode about me maybe doing my first live performance in front of a packed street, let's call it. And I say packed street as in there's a few neighbors out front watching me. And I might have been a little Myers Court back then. So those are probably my top 5 toys from when I was a kid. Now we're going to move forward into working for the Giraffe. When I was, timelines are so fun. I would say 23. My wife's probably going to correct me when she sees this episode. I decided to leave my job where I was working. It was just not 9 to 5, but a part-time job somewhere. And I started working for the Giraffe, which I think you can all put 2 and 2 together on we're talking about this topic as a whole, what the Giraffe is. I don't want to get in any trouble legally if someone sees this, and I may blurt out something about the company that was not flattering. But I started working for the Giraffe. We opened a store. Yeah, we opened a store the first, and it was the second one in the area, third one in the area. But anyways, we opened a store. Myself and my brother Tom applied and we were hired. We opened the store probably 2 weeks after we started. We actually built this, and I built the store as in we put the structures together, we put the pegs up, we put the initial run of everything into the store. And as a kid going, one day you're going to work there is just like, I'm going to be in a place that holds so much love as a kid, of just, this is where your dreams were made because everything you ever wanted is in this place. And it was like that. It really was like that even at my age working there. The first one of the first days we did training was at another store that had already been open, and it was just walking through the aisles and going like, "Oh, that's something I've always wanted." Like Tom and I bought, funny enough, we were talking about the Power Morpher earlier. We bought the re-release that day. That was our first training day, and we walked up and saw it, and we went, "All right, we're going to use our little discount that we got." We used our discount, and we got the re-release of the Morphers because that was something I wanted the re-release, and so did he. So we both bought that, and then I think it was the next training they had a Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner Green Lantern, but it was Blue Lantern and Yellow Lantern. And I was like, yes, I want that. So I picked that up. And then that just became like I wanted everything. But it kind of worked in another way over the long haul. And that was when you start working there and you start seeing them every day, it sort of becomes a second home in the way that you don't always have to bring that home because you see it every day. You see, it might be a toy that you just are like, I need to get this. Well, what are you going to do with it? I'm going to bring it home and put it on a shelf. All right, you going to play with it? No, it's just going to sit on a shelf. Well, it's sitting at a shelf that you see every day. Do you need to pay $50 to bring and put it on your shelf at home? Or do you just leave it there and save yourself $50? And that's sort of the way my mind started to work. Was I was seeing every toy I ever wanted, but I knew that I would only be taking it home, and it's not like I would be running around with friends playing with it. It would just sit on a shelf. So I went, well, I do that. I see this every day. I don't need to bring it home. And I know there was definitely some toys that I did purchase. I'm not saying I didn't buy anything, but it was very select. Um, the Dragon Dagger from Power Rangers was a toy I always wanted as a kid. And when that got re-released, I picked that up. I'm trying to think of some other stuff. A couple Lego sets here and there, but for the most part, when you see it every day, it doesn't lose its luster. You just kind of say, I'm glad it exists and I see it every day, and that's enough. So what could have been a really bad thing if I didn't have self-control, it kind of didn't happen. I was kind of okay with just going, all right, I see it for a few months. And it, by the time it's out of stock, usually you've seen it so many times that the thrill of seeing it is gone. As in the same feeling as if you bought something you threw on a shelf and you go, okay, well, there it is. 3 days later, you're like, oh, right, that's there. And you totally forget about it. So it worked definitely in my favor. Um, Overall, working for the Giraffe, I had a lot of fun. I met so many incredible people there, which is not something I expected. I had made friends at my former work, but the closeness of these people have become basically an extended family. Like, I shout out to Tara, shout out to Sean, shout out to Brett, Leanne, Emily, uh, Dan. I'm probably missing half of you, and I greatly apologize. But everybody from that I met during my time there, like, it was so cool to meet so many people who had so many similar interests as me. Like the funniest thing was when we first started, Tom and I were the only two going to Fan Expo. And we were so excited because we were telling everybody, like, dude, this is the coolest thing. This is the coolest thing. This is the coolest thing. And it wasn't till like 2 years into it that I think we were coming around January. And I said, I'm going to Fan Expo. And then everyone else decided they were going to Fan Expo too. And about, I would say 12 people, I mean, maybe exaggerating a bit, but like a good amount of the staff was going. And it got to the point where we were running into staffing problems that weekend because we all booked tickets. And I remember the next year, the one manager said, well, because you all did that, next year it's going to be a lottery. And you're just going to put your names in a hat and we're going to pull 4 or 5 and you guys will get to go. You guys will get the time off. The rest of you have to work, which I just laughed at because I booked my hotel early. I get my tickets like before Christmas for the following year. I'm going whether you like it or not. And that didn't end up happening, but it was a very funny threat that we all just kind of laughed at when that came up. But yeah, overall, I have no problem working at the draft. I loved it. It was a great place. It was a great bunch of people. The only problem was hours. Like that's as with most, as you can all imagine, when it comes to after your peak season of December, it really slows down, and that became the biggest problem. And that's why I had to leave because when you're working 20 hours a week because that's all they can give you because you have to give hours to everybody, it's a problem. So, but other than that, great company, great people, nothing to complain about. You're working with toys, like really, you're working with toys and you're working with kids running around having fun. Like you can't really say anything bad about that. Now, on to the last part of this, toy collecting. We're going to talk about my top 5 toys of today. I was going to say top 5 adult toys, and I stopped myself because that could be taken in many directions, and I'm not going to go down that route. First, we're going to mention the one thing that I stopped myself from buying even today, and that is the new line of the WWE Elites and the WWE Ultimate figures. I think they're some of the best looking wrestling figures, and I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 of them right now. Unfortunately, with the price, they're about 30 to 40 bucks a piece. But the articulation is so good, the detail is so good on them. And that's just for the elite. The ultimate ones come with extra heads and extra hands and extra accessories. And they're like 50 bucks, but they look so good. And as a wrestling fan, they are some of the best looking wrestling figures out there. And I would love to get more of them, but unfortunately, I just can't buy them all because it's A, too much. B, I just don't have the space for them. Right now, I have RVD from one of the latest sets and the 3 that I'm so happy because I was never able to get these growing up. At least the versions of them back in the day, but I'm so glad I have them now. I have Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Hollywood Hogan, all NWO line. And I maybe will try and get another NWO one if I can. I know an Eric Bischoff is coming out now, but he's not an NWO attire. So maybe pick that up. And I don't know if there's any other ones. Oh, X-Pac is the other one that I need. I need to get an X-Pac. But yeah, the elite and the ultimate figures are just amazing, but they're so pricey now. Like back in the day, a wrestling figure was 10 bucks. Now we're looking at like 40 bucks, 50 bucks, and it's just like, I can't afford that. I've got too many other things in my interest. Secondly, the green and white Ranger toys. As some of you know, and if you've seen me on other podcasts, I was a giant Jason David Frank fan. Unfortunately, we lost him this year, which was absolutely tragic. I met him at one of the conventions, and he was a delight and a half. Loved his fans, a great human being, so positive, and unfortunately, his demons caught up with him. But I own the Dragon Dagger, as I said earlier. I was gifted from a friend, Gavin actually. Saba and I picked up the original Morpher, and I picked up the Green White Ranger combo Morpher from my time at the Giraffe, and I love those toys. I love the way they look. I love the way they sound. Like the audio in them is good when they talk and when they make the noise. They're great toys. And the legacy line from the Power Rangers, they did such a good job rebuilding the toy itself, but also the box is pretty similar to the original. Overall, they did a great job, and I love having those pieces, and I really should display them. It's trying to find a shadow box that's deep enough to fit them because Saba is like that wide, and most shadow boxes are just a little too small. So one day I'll be able to find a shadow box I can fit all those in. Also, Saba's like that long too, so you got to get a good size box. Uh, third, let's go with I I think Funko Pops are a little overkill. I have a couple, and I say a couple as in I probably have 10, 12 that I really like. I have a couple others, but they're in storage and I'm not really freaking out about. Um, my wife bought me one before Pops became Pops. They were I didn't even know what they were. She gave it to me, and it's the Two-Face, the original Two-Face from I think one of the first DC lines. And honestly, I thought it was the ugliest toy ever. I thought this was the ugliest looking toy, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but thank you. Cool. Like I'm a Two-Face fan, so whatever. But now it's one of the coolest things I have because I know how hard it is to get that. And other than that, the only other pops that I'm a really big fan of are the Metallica ones because I'm a big Metallica fan. I don't have all of them. I only have James and Lars. I don't have Kirk and Rob, which with all with all of the toy sets that Metallica has done, I know they had the McFarlane ones back in the 2000s. They've had their own that they've released, and now they've got the pops. I'm never able to get all four for whatever reason. For the McFarlane ones, I just have Jason. For the bobblehead toys, I just have Rob. And for the pops, I've got James and Lars. Like it's always a couple of them or one of them. I never end up getting all four, which I really should try and get them because there's Lady Justice from the Justice for All album. I should get all of them. But anyways, I love those. I think they're kind of cool looking. And I know they just released the Master of Puppets box set, but it was gone like that. So never got a hold of it. Lastly is my Green Lantern. I have the ceramic Green Lantern from DC Directs, which I picked up from Niagara Falls Comic Con. That was a present from my wife that she was going to pick up for me at some point, but I ended up finding it for a very good price. So I kind of picked it up for myself for her. And I love that thing. I love that thing. I would never bring it to a convention because it's ceramic and it weighs a ton. But it is cool to be like, as a Lantern fan, to be like, I have a lantern. In the ring, it comes with a ring, and when you put the ring up to the front, it glows. It's pretty cool. I gotta admit, as a Lantern fan, it's pretty cool. So that is probably my fifth favorite toy. And it's not even really a toy, it's more of a display piece, but I count it. So yeah, so the WWE Elite, the Green and White Ranger stuff, the Metallica Pops, the Green Lantern, and lastly, the McFarlane DC toys are just blowing it out of the water. Like I can't pick one because every time they release one in the past little while, it's been amazing. Like they had the Blackest Night series, which was amazing. They had the what else? They had Superboy, they had a Grifter. They've got the line coming out now from the Arkham, or not the Arkham, the Christian Bale movies. Like they're just McFarlane knocks it out of the park with their stuff. So that's another series that again I could go nuts with. I've got one. I've got John Stewart Green Lantern. But even that, it's the same with the pops. I was always when I first saw DC Direct or the McFarlane ones, I said I'm gonna only get the lanterns, and then They released Jon Stewart. I picked that up because it was the first one, and then they released the Blackest Night ones, and it's 4 of them plus there's a build one that comes with the 4 of them, and I'm like, okay, I'm already getting to the point of, do I need 4 more figures? 5 if you count the build. It's the same with the pops. The pops, I was like, I'm only gonna get lanterns, and then they made variants for like every character as lantern, and I'm just like, okay, this is overkill. I can't do all of these. So yeah, the McFarlanes are knocking out of the park with everything they do. So, and they've been doing that for years. They're the ones that just they evolved figures into collectibles now, and now it's to the point. I read a stat: more adults are buying toys than kids now. More collectors are adults. So you go into a Toys R Us now, you're seeing more adults there buying for themselves than for kids, which is insane to me now. But like I said earlier, it's good if you're a manufacturer because now you've got people buying 2 versions of it. You're buying one for a shelf and a collect, and you're buying a second one that you want to open and play with or display in some way. So yeah, it's a weird time if you're a toy collector because you've got everything you could ever imagine. The problem is, though, you've got everything you've ever imagined, but you're paying for it because some of these prices are getting crazy. Like the Power Rangers ones that are out now, and they're only like this big, but you've got every character you could ever think of. I've seen all the the ninja suits from the movie, but they're like 40, $50. And I'm like, I would love to have all of them, but I can't pay 40 and $50 a figure. So you get everything you want, but you're paying for it. So you got a little bit of a flip side on that one. And that will sort of close out our main event for tonight. I hope you guys have had a great time. We've been doing this for about 56 minutes. We're going to close it up in the next little bit. But first, we're just going to rapid fire through 3 questions that we received this week from the listeners. I greatly appreciate you guys sending in your questions. If you have any questions, please DM me at Myers Corp at Myers Corp Creations. I've corrected it now. At Myers Corp Creations on Instagram or on TikTok or on Facebook, or leave a comment on the video on YouTube. More than happy to answer your questions next week or the following week or whenever I get to them. First question here is, what's a cosplay skill you wish you had? One of the biggest ones is sewing. I have never been a big sewing person. I've always wanted to learn to sew, and I can sew, but I can't sew well because I haven't had practice. Like I can do the basics. Like I can thread a needle, put it in the machine, do a line. Yay. It's the more advanced stuff. And for what I've been doing, I'm doing traditionally foam things for my cosplays, and any material is either wrapped around foam and glued, or I'm going to Value Village or a secondhand store to get material or clothes, for example, and just building off of that. I've never really built anything clothing wise from scratch. That will hopefully be changing soon. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge on a possible cosplay coming up. By the way, I did say in the original post for this that I would be talking about my cosplays, but we're going to hold off on that for a little bit. I just got a couple things to work on, and then we'll talk about it maybe next week. But yeah, sewing is something I've always been jealous of. I know I could do it, but it's one of those, do I stick with something I know, or do I push myself onto something I need to learn? I sadly slide over to the one that I know well. I will probably this year be pushing my sewing skills a little bit and trying to build a couple things from scratch. So keep an eye out for that. More news on that coming up. Question number 2, what inspires you? What inspires me? Seeing other cosplayers and seeing what they can build really inspires me. It also scares me, though. And that's a feeling that I think a lot of people get. It does become a little intimidating when I see some people and what they can build on what is their first cosplay. I also have to remember that there are many factors involved that I don't know. I don't know what their schedule is like. I don't know what their home life is like. I don't know if they're in a relationship. I don't know if they work 9 to 5, etc. These are all things that I do that impact my schedule for the better. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I work 9 to 5. I have a wife. I have animals I have to take care of. I'm not available all day to cosplay. So that is part of I know that I have to check myself sometimes when I do get a little intimidated, but it also, like I said, it also inspires me when I see some big pieces that are made. And if I ever see you at a convention and you're carrying in some big sword that lights up or some big armor piece, I will be the first person to run over to you and go, explain to me from step one how you built that, because I want to try it. And I know there's easy ways to do it, and I know there's a couple pain in the arse ways to do it, and I'm hoping you're gonna give me that, "Oh, it's easy," and then I can do one too. So, um, yeah, definitely seeing other art really does inspire me to grow my art. And lastly, what is some advice to new cosplayers? Ooh, that's a good question. What is some advice to new cosplayers? Some advice is don't care about anyone else's opinion. And that's, that's not even a life advice. That's just advice. Don't care what anyone says, because you will get it. You will undoubtedly get the people commenting on your posts and on your cosplay who, have nothing better to do than sit there and slam your art. Who cares? Who cares? Are you going to change who you are because of what one random person who you have no idea who it is says about your art? I hope not. I really hope not, because it doesn't matter. Do your art because you enjoy it, and build your cosplays because that's what you want to do, not because someone told you to do, not because, if you have friends out there who want to do a big group cosplay and you don't want to do it, then don't do it, because it's not, do things that you want to do, because in the end, we get one go around here, and enjoy every moment you can, because that's what you're here for, is to enjoy every moment you have here, and don't care about people who have comments, because the chances are you're going to get 95% of people supporting you, and you'll get 5% that are going to throw crap at you. And it's not worth caring about them. It really isn't. Because no matter what you do, you're going to get crap. So just let it roll off. It's not really worth it. I'm here to support you. And if you ever find someone that's flinging crap at you, let me know, because I'll tell you how good your art is. Because guess what? All art is good. I hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight. It was a pleasure being here. It's a pleasure to be here every Monday night. Thank you all for sticking around. Now, the moment that you all have been waiting for. The announcement for next month is we are going to do month of March is going to be a theme, and that theme is the greatest decade in history. The 90s. Yes, March will be 90s month. Every week we will do a show that will be themed around the 90s. It will have a specific topic, but we will be talking about the 90s and what that version of the 90s meant to me. So, next week we're going to be doing 90s comics. So, we're going to be talking about different comics in the 90s, including Death of Superman, Spawn, what some of my memories were of growing up in the 90s and being a nerd fan, and some of the comics that I had and still do have. And we're just going to be talking about 90s comics. Episode 4, which will be the week after, is going to be 90s music. So we're going to be talking from all things Nirvana to Backstreet Boys and Spice Girls. There was so much variety in music in the 90s. We're going to have a good conversation about some highlights, some lowlights. I grew up, I was born in 88, so I got a little bit of rock, but to be fair, late 90s, mid 90s, I was maybe listening to some Spice Girls and some Backstreet Boys. So we're going to be talking all about that. The next episode is going to be episode 5, and that's going to be 90s wrestling. For all the wrestling fans out there, we're going to be doing a wrestling episode. We're going to be doing 90s wrestling. We're going to be talking about all the things that happened in the 90s. And if you're a wrestling fan, that is your decade. We're going to be talking quickly about the early 90s because I was not there for a lot of that. But once you hit late 90s, we're going to be talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin. We're going to be talking about ECW. We're going to be talking about the Attitude Era and how much that played into the wrestling that we have today. Episode 6, we're going to be talking about 90s video games. This was the boom of the video game generation and the video game era. So we're going to be talking about the Nintendo. We're going to talk about NES, Genesis, N64, PlayStation, all the amazing systems coming out in that decade. And we're going to be talking about all things video games and some of the systems I had, still have, some of the great games, etc. Hope you guys will come in for that on episode 6. And the last, because there's 5 weeks, 5 Mondays in March. Episode 7 is 90s horror. We're going to be talking about the 90s slasher genre because that's what really was big in the 90s. We're going to be talking about all things from the sequels. We're going to be talking about practical effects versus special effects, CGI. We're going to be talking about sequels and how it kind of gets overkill after a while. But we're going to talk about 90s horror because, well, my name's Michael Myers, so let's do a horror episode. But anyways, thank you all for joining us. We have gone over the hour. I want to let you guys enjoy the rest of your night. Hopefully, if you're in the Ontario, Southern Ontario area, you are home safe. It is blowing snow tonight, and I think we're going into a little bit of rain, so it's going to be kind of yucky in the morning. But have a safe night, folks. Hope you guys will join us next week. We're going to be talking about 90s comics here on Monday Night Nerd, episode 3. 90s month starts off next week. Can't wait to see you. Have a good night. I'll see you all later.